discontinuous occurrence of it.
I'm sure we'll have an opportunity to explore some of the very insightful ideas that you had, a perspective that I think is fresh. Moving on now, if I could invite Mr. Dan Aluf to give his presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. So I would. We'll move forward. So, my name is Dan Aluf. I'm counselor for Mashav, which is Israel's Agency for International Development Cooperation. I'm a farmer, first of all. I have a farm back home, and I was chosen to come here because I'm an expert on micro-irrigation, on horticulture, on open field crops. I have worked in private sector, and I'm now in public sector. And what I want to start is with this, what I call a teamwork or ecosystem. I believe this is a secret to any ecosystem in agriculture that succeeds. It's always farmer working together with state, together with research, extension, and private sector. This type of teamwork in Israel is happening in a very efficient way. The knowledge is moving from the farmer to these stakeholders and getting back to him on the field level in a very fast way to increase this productivity that we are definitely seeing in different regions in the world, that productivity is increasing, but I very much agree with the speakers before me saying productivity is not the only thing we are looking at. I want to give an example that I will repeat twice during this short presentation, drip irrigation. Drip is something Israel invented many years ago, and with it, knowledge was generated. As I told you, I live this solution of drip irrigation, but this amazing system is a toolbox. You need to know how to design it. You need to know how to install it. You need to know how to use it, when and how much to irrigate. You need to know how to utilize it in the right way. Only then will you reach 95% water use efficiency that it can reach. 95% means that out of every 10 drops coming out of the dripper, the plant will take 9.5 drops. This can be done only if you know all the different aspects of drip. So these are a few examples of installation, how to do it in the right way, how to be an expert on the system, how to know the controller, which is actually the brain of the system, how to know the filtration, the valves, the water meter, all of these aspects. In Israel, we also share knowledge, and FAO is a big contributor to this. FAO developed a system that actually gives in any place in the world the data of evapotranspiration. This can only optimize irrigation. We use also weather stations, and these weather stations we upload on a daily basis for farmers, and they know how to increase their efficiency. Drip is not only water, it can also bring nutrients. So how do we do it in the right way? How do we use the right fertilizers in the right concentrations, in the right interval? And here I want to tell you about what we are doing in India, because in India we are having the largest of its kind project in agriculture. It's a government-to-government cooperation, and it is combining Ministry of Agriculture of India, 16 states, but actually all states of India, and Mashav that I am leading here in Israel, in India of course, and Israel, which is represented as a government. This is a map of India, and these dots represent centers of excellence, which are actually the platform in which we are generating knowledge from this cooperation to the farmer level. So currently we are having 28 centers of excellence which are fully active, and we have many more on the way. And these centers, this is a picture of one of them, they are actually advanced, intensive agriculture farms. Now, saying that, they're also very much tailored to the local conditions, and I will demonstrate in which way, but they are demonstrating a comprehensive value chain. Again, touching the points that you have raised before. And when we come to this cooperation, I look at this guy, which is a farmer, and I say, I want to make him stronger. I want to make him a better businessman. I want to start with this, and I return to the fact that I'm a farmer. In Israel, if you are a farmer, you come to make money. You are not a farmer because your father was a farmer. And this is something that I try to bring into the value of what we are doing. As I am a big believer in results, I take time to focus myself on what we do. So when we focus, we look at these key crops, vegetables, mango, pomegranate, citrus, dates, and I actually look on the value chain of these key crops. So we are touching nursery management from left to right, best practices, harvesting, post-harvesting, and also marketing. Because if you don't sell your product in the right price, there's no use on everything. So this is always what we try to bring to the table. And again, here the farmer. This is a farmer from North India that is selling premium quality of citrus and making money. And this is, when I see him, I know we are on the right track. We are not a university. We are a large-scale project. And when I demonstrate, I want the demonstration to be large-scale, not a single tree and not 5. I want it to be an orchard. So this is a citrus center of excellence. When we do nursery management, it has a sustainability to it because we are selling, it reaches more than 80 lakh seedlings, which is 8 million seedlings every year, that are going to the farmer in these boxes and changing the starting point of the season because they are using the highest quality of seeds, the best uniformity, and everything is, of course, clean of any disease. So we are monitoring the activities. And we are, as I told you, the numbers are there. It is diverse, like anything, any project I think is heterogenic to some extent. We are trying always, in Israel we go to the military, and I was in the paratroopers. So there, when we are running as a unit, we always have strong and weaker soldiers, but the point is how do we come together as a unit, and how do we help the less strong come together. So we do it in nursery, both in fruit and vegetables, and we tailor our solutions because every solution can be full of technology, medium technology, or zero technology, but the standard of quality must stay there. So we are tailoring solutions, and our centers will always be tailored to local conditions. We aim a lot about transfer of knowledge, so we bring Indian officers to Israel, we bring Israeli experts to India, and we train hands-on. And these experts, Indian experts, are later on moving the technology and the knowledge to the farmer level. I'm proud to say that last year in 2018, we trained 140,000 farmers in our centers of excellence, and our mission is, of course, to increase this number more and more. The knowledge comes in the form also of protocols, of guidelines, and here we are emphasizing what are the topics, if it is nursery, irrigation, canopy management, and more, but it is also in local conditions. It's also in the terminology a farmer can understand and actually implement. And I think this is a game changer. We have a work plan, and this 3-year work plan gives us a lot of ability to plan and to execute. And this 3-year work plan is divided from objectives and areas of activity, and this is a current one we are implementing. And I would like to, of course, relate to the point you gave from Tanzania, that it is always a long term. It is nothing. I am for a very basic point. I am privileged because I came into a project that is running for 10 years. And I'm picking the fruits of my predecessors. And this is the patience we need to come to when we implement such projects. And I definitely can relate to the point you were mentioning. Irrigation, fertigation, we are doing a lot of work on this. We are doing precision agriculture. We are now introducing satellite images that give climatic conditions of the field level in India. And for me, it's not only talking. We are actually taking pictures from satellites and giving the data, and the farmer and the center can irrigate accordingly. pest and disease, when there is a nematode problem, like you see on the right, there is actually no yield. The farmer is putting inputs into the ground and getting zero profit. On the left, we give the Israeli solution for nematode, which is conventional, which is known. There is nothing new about it. We are just implementing it in a very orderly way that the farmer can implement by himself. And this farmer, if he grows a cucumber on the left, he will make money. The farmer on the right will lose money. We are having post-harvest, so we're having a very clear value chain for post-harvest. How do you do? What is the washing and the waxing and the storage in cold chain? How do you keep the crown of the pomegranate to ensure you get profit? And as we are an agency for development, we look also on the social aspect. And I think, Dr. Tang, you are mentioning that agriculture is not only business model, it's first of all business model, but has also a social aspect. And definitely we are on the same page on this, and we look to do women empowerment in agriculture. Last slide, with your permission. This is our Center of Excellence. Last month, we sat with the Ministry of Agriculture of India and said, what is the way forward? And the way forward is how does this center adopt 50 villages around it? And the idea is now to move from a center level to an area level, to clusters of excellence. And we are now talking about, should we identify progressive farmers to set an example? Should we put the infrastructure of nursery management and post-harvest in this area? And how do we take the knowledge? How do we bring the infrastructure of irrigation, which are under pressure? And this way, we are looking to have this impact and to cover and to bring all of these 50 villages. And I must say, it multiplies into 1,500 villages across India, because this is for each center. And with this, I finish. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Very practical and from what we've seen, a successful example of triangular cooperation, and I'm pleased to see that you've focused on the notion of having a system in place, looking at the whole dimension. I think there's a lot we can learn from that. Thank you for that. If we move on now to Mr. Nguyen Thi Huong.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Chairman. My name is Nguyen Thi Huong. I Institute of Agricultural Science for Southern Vietnam. Today, I'm very happy to be here to learn from you all and to share some information related to this section. My topic today is how to link small farmers to market to strengthening agriculture value chain. A case study in Vietnam. First of all, I would like to talk about the issues and challenge for small farmers. There are some main issues and challenges for small farmers in agriculture in Vietnam. Firstly, farmers have imperfect market for inputs or products. It means that the farmer have to buy input materials with high price, but after producing their products, they do not insert up the value of the products on the market. This leading to small value realization. Secondly, absence of access to credit market, leading to suboptimal investment decision or input application. It is very difficult for small farmers to access to financial resources because the bank in Vietnam do not believe them. Next, the poor farmer resources. Normally lack of labor in rural areas due to young people tend to move to big cities to find job opportunity. Normally, old people and children live and do their farms. So it's difficult to find sufficiently experienced laborers, especially when enter the picking harvest season. And finally, limited access to suitable extension and poor access to public goods, for example, electricity, irrigation, and water. There are some main issues and challenges for small farmers. So, how to link small farmers to market? For example, link farmer to retailer, domestic trader, cooperative, and agro process or exporter. This is a case of Vietnam, a case study of Vietnam. Firstly, I would like to talk about how to link farmer to retailer. Normally, large supermarket chains will not usually want to work with farmers on a long-term basis. The farmer involved in such linkage often face difficulty in meeting quality specification. The farmers also have to grow new varieties and change production practice to influence size and moisture content. Stagger planting dates to ensure year-round availability. Secondly, link farmer to domestic trade. Traditional, the trade have to interact with farmers on individually basis, either buying from them at local markets or at the farm gate. Purchases at local markets can be efficient if they enable the trader to buy sufficient quantity to achieve some economies of scale with subsequent transport, which is usually the main marketing cost. The marketing cost can be reduced if farmers can work together to assemble on their products at one location for purchase by one or more traders. Another way to link farmer is linkage through cooperative. The formation of cooperative by the small farmer enable them to accept both input and output markets in a profitable manner. The cooperative model has been successful in many parts of the country, but the major problem that they face is the lack of managerial skills. This combined with the tendency to expand the activity based on their ability also pose a major threat. Another way to link farmer is to agro-processor. The farmer growing crops that can be produced year-round or stored for a considerable period of time can engage in linkage with agro-processor to ensure market for their produce. And finally, we link farmer to its exporter. To link farmers to exporter, identification of the potential markets for the produce of the small farmers is necessary, and this can be done with the involvement of some external catalysts. Export to more sophisticated market can involve farmers in considerable complexity and risk. That is some information to want to share with you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed. I think we've made up some time. Last but not least, we have John Patrick. So I've got the pronunciation right? Yeah. From our RIS here at our RIS to give his presentation. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, sir. And again, I would like to thank you for setting the context for this discussion. For those of us who are not here, the context was there are about 821 million people who are actually malnourished in the world. 821 million. Now, I even have more depressing news. The number is actually increasing for the last 2-3 years. I mean, for the last maybe even 10 years. And remember, the output is increasing every year, agricultural output. That sends us to one thing. There is a monster that is in the agricultural value chains. It's known, by the way. So many people know about it. It was discovered as early as 1 century AD, but it's hardly spoken about. It is post-harvest losses. Presently, 30 to 50% of what the farmers produce gets to waste before it reaches to the final consumer. Now, what that means is that this is spread in processing, first of all, harvesting, processing, storage facilities, and transportation facilities. Now, over time, the emphasis has been that let's increase the output, let's increase the efficiency, but this factor of post-harvest losses has been not given, I feel, a significant attention. Now, but first, I want us to be clear about what I'm talking about, the concept of post-harvest losses. It's not the food that goes to waste overall. It's just the food that is produced and does not reach the farmer. I have some statistics. I'll ask the person to show us the PPT. This is exactly the picture. In sub-Saharan Africa, almost 95% of the food is wasted, as compared to just 5% that is wasted in the process of consumption. Now, even further, this is how the situation looks like for the key East African countries. So the green one, there's an analysis of what actually is produced. I mean, the post-harvest losses in 2007, 2010, and the actual change in output. So what you can see there, except for the case of Rwanda, which has really skewed data in Africa, the level of increase in output for so many African countries is actually less than the level of post-harvest losses. So if we're going to think about increasing, if we're going to think about ensuring that there is food security in the global south, if truly we're going to leave no one behind, we have to look at how we are going to see to it that the post-harvest losses are reduced. There's a lot of work already in it. And I can tell you that there's a lot of innovations in storage facilities and in processing and so on. But the point again is that whereas a lot of effort looks to be put on processing, which actually is very good as well, but we realize that the largest proportion of the loss actually happens in the harvesting stage of the production process. So I think it's time that the entire value chain looks at improving technology, if so, into the processes of harvesting of output, if we shall see to it that that there is food security, there is more food available to the people. There's a bigger dimension to that, And that is the larger part that I left out in this part, in this data, that the loss is even bigger in perishable commodities. And this has to do a lot with the transportation facilities and so on and so on. So, and yet the perishable commodities like the vegetables are going to be a very significant factor if we are going to look at the new aspects of, if we're going to look at the nutritional component of food security. We will need a lot of these vegetables, a lot of the fruits. So the emphasis needs to kind of drive towards, whereas increasing output, but also reducing post-harvest losses. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you very much to the panelists for some very interesting presentations and comments. Now, first of all, let me apologize about being very tight on the timing. I had hoped that we would have some time for discussion, and I'm pleased to say that we have about half an hour for discussion, because I think through discussion we're going to have a much more richer understanding of what the issues are. We have individual perspectives and some very, very useful perspectives from the panelists, from the experiences of work on value chains in India, in Tanzania, in various places around the world. But it's now, I think, opportune to open this to discussion. And just to remind you what the questions were that the panel were asked to consider. First of all, what are the potential areas of cooperation under South-South collaboration and trilateral cooperation to facilitate value addition? And we saw the example from Mashav, the work that they've been doing here about really, I think, very impressive work in value addition. What are the technical, institutional, and capacity challenges? Now, we heard from the last speaker about post-harvest loss and the huge amount of post-harvest loss in some countries, and that's partly determined by the absence of public goods, absence of roads, irrigation systems, etc. But there are other things, technologies that can be adopted to address that really urgent issue if we want to achieve SDGs. The point about South-South trade, and I again apologise to Professor Chakraborty for cutting him off, but I think that's absolutely crucial. It's not just about transferring technology, it's about raising the level of trade. And he mentioned the fact that South-South trade is stunted. Now, if one thing that comes out of this South-South dialogue that would be really worthwhile is to increase that trade significantly. As Minister Goyal said yesterday, you know, time for talking has gone. We need to do, we need to act. So if we can address that issue in some way through these dialogues, that would be, I think, really helpful. And of course, what are the pathways through South-South collaboration and trilateral collaboration to facilitate adoption and propagation of climate-smart technologies in particular? So those are the three broad issues. So I invite questions from the audience. If you could say, first of all, who you are and what your affiliation is, and who is the question directed to. So I'll take three questions first, then I'll take another three. So first three. This gentleman here.
Thank you, Chair.
Lady there, and the lady.
Thank you, Chair. I am S.K. Singh. I have been the advisor of the Minister of Agriculture, Government of India. I am from the Ministry of Agriculture, Government of India, presently Director Knowledge Management in Agriculture. Now, given India has the goal of doubling farmers' income, And we have been talking for sustainable, profitable, affordable agriculture over the world. Now, what if the agriculture is not sustainable, not profitable, and not affordable for the small holdings, which is just going up and up over years? The farm holdings from 20 acres has gone down below 1 acre in India and probably China, Southeast Asia. Now the question is, even when, given the situation when the agriculture is not profitable and sustainable, what is the pathway? When farmers are opting out of agriculture, what should we do? Now, the point is, onion prices about 7-8 years in 2004 and 5 have brought down a democratic central government. 2 years back, when we were not having sufficient pulse in India, the prices per kg pulse was about 180 kg. And when Government of India incurred a lot of expenditure and we were able to make the India self-sufficient in pulse production, prices went down to 30 kg, from 180 to 30 kg. Given all these situations, this affects the sustainability, affordability of the system. What should we do?
Thank you very much. Please.
Hi, thank you. My name is Anthea Mulakala. I'm from the Asia Foundation. I don't have it's not directed to anyone in specific, so I'm happy if anyone would like to answer it. But I'm interested in the gender dimensions of this sector, and I noticed there was a couple of references in passing, but I think it's so critical to really look at, gender disaggregated data. A lot of women are farmers, or if the farmer is not a woman, the farming is done by women, and it's so important to really understand what their needs are, make sure that women have access to the type of training and technology that you're all providing that seems to be quite remarkable. Also that women have access to markets. So just recognizing that women are often a huge part of the agricultural sector, and in many cases when men have migrated to other countries to work, or women are working on very smallholder type farms that may be below kind of the threshold that you're looking at. How are you taking that into account?
Thank you. And the last question in this round?
Thank you, Chair. I'm Pradnya from United Nations World Food Programme. I think it was a very insightful discussion, and I congratulate the panelists for bringing out a lot of issues around, and a special thank to the most specific examples and case studies from Israel and some of the issues. I think, one issue which actually I'm very thankful that it was brought out at the end was the focus on nutrition and the dichotomy, where we actually are talking about rising hunger and malnutrition at the same time increasing the farm output. We also need to look at the per capita availability and all. So, taking that into cognizance, there are two things which I actually want to share or want to really pose as questions to the panel. One is actually the focus on nutrition. So, still the narrative in terms of food security is about more of food grains and all. Though we actually do hear a lot about agrobiodiversity and diversification of crops and all, I don't think enough emphasis and a serious look is being given. And from the South-South cooperation priority perspective, I think that is something which is extremely important. And having said that, if that becomes a kind of important aspect, then going forward, what really is important is the issue which again was brought out was the post-harvest losses. And as we actually start looking at these kinds of varieties which are more fragile in terms of like the vegetables and fruits and some of the millets which actually can be called as nutri-cereals, then the value of shelf life and overall the food chain it becomes much more difficult. And I think there is a huge scope for South-South collaboration and cooperation in that sense for enhanced nutrition. The second point I felt was a bit missing is, the extreme events are rising day by day. And the role of the safety nets, the social protection schemes is something which is actually becoming more and more important and underlined. And that as well becomes a kind of priority when we talk about South-South cooperation, which actually can ensure sustained food security. I mean, not only from the agriculture output perspective, but from more of a distribution and maintaining the buffer stocks and the nutrition over a longer period of time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. If I could just ask the panel members to address this. I mean, if I could invite Dr. Tang to address that really important question that was first posed about what do you do when, if and when farming is not, smallholder farming in particular, is not profitable. The questioner gave a very good example of pulses. There was a huge issue 2 years ago in India about pulses. There was as a consequence, there was a massive effort to increase pulse production, and subsequently the pulse price collapsed and the farmers are back to where they started. What do you do?
Okay, very good. This time you don't have time limit.
Yes, if I may say, we have to be out of this room by 10:30.
So,
We have more questions.
and secondly, I don't think this question is targeted to me, but it's simply I said something about sustainability. So right, I can, in response to your chairship, answer this question. I think it's a very good question. The right answer, there is no right answer actually. But as far as I'm understanding, this situation should not be allowed for the farms or farmers not to have profitability, right? Sometimes when there is a shortage of food, the prices will go up. But quite often, the government will care a lot about this price surge. But on the other hand, when there is a situation of price going down, because mainly the small farmers bear the outcome of the prices going down, sometimes the government care less. Why? Because there is a bargaining or lobbying for the, one is for the consumer, the other is for the farmers. I think when it comes to the unsustainability of agriculture or unprofitable, what we can do is that certainly the market forces will make adjustment, right? When there is a shortage or when is a surplus, the price is too high or too low. Market forces will have the determinant, what's the English word? Will finally determine to make a resource allocation. But secondly, we need to have the government intervention. The government intervention is quite necessary and should be in good time. Otherwise, there will be problems. Not problems about farmers or agriculture, but more important, they will have social problems or even political problems. So by that time, or well before that time, the government intervention should be there. Otherwise, you may have a change of government.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to ask Professor Chakraborty to come on to that point. But before I do, there's the issue of gender, which should have been much more, I agree, should have been much more prominently visible in the discussion so far. but wasn't. The fact of the matter is, in most countries of the global south now, with a lot of men migrating to cities, farming is being done largely by women. So it's very much something that we ought to have right at the forefront of our mind. I'd like to ask my colleague panelist on my right, the experience in Tanzania. I mean, to what extent was the issue of women farmers expressly addressed?
Okay, thank you for all the questions, actually. Can I, combine these questions together? Particularly also about the first question, Dr. Tong already introduced the experiences from my field perspective, but from, at the national China's perspective, currently China has recently initiated a new program or strategic program domestically that rural reinterfertilization. That means that channel all the resources, human capital, capital, financial capital, and also policies to the rural area. Because as you observed, through the last 3 or 4 decades of industrialization and urbanization, that the villages or rural areas has been left behind a little bit. So now it's the timing to channel the resource back. So I do agree with you that the government intervention should be timely and should be properly. And currently combined with the poverty alleviation program, it works very well currently so far. And secondly, thank you for your gender questions. I just writing an article which revealed the last 7 and 4 decades of poverty alleviation policy in China from the gender perspective, to see whether, how the China's policy, poverty reduction policies deal with gender issues. And if you through the policies, literatures, and also their strategies, policies, practices, you can observe very clearly, even though that China, they don't have a gender aggregated data and a gender mainstreaming policies. I mean, through this English perspective, but actually the China has another different perspective or another logic to deal with gender issues, because you can observe that they emphasize so much about national state building since the 1949 and through the 1980s, and after that they emphasized the development of market. And then recently, particularly after 2000, they deal with the family issue. You targeted the family, the household. And then gradually, they narrow down to the gender. So you can see the from process, there's a gradually narrow down, even though that is not mainstreaming the gender issues at the first beginning, but it's gradually, the whole development process will guiding you to that process. And it's also happens in Tanzania case as well. When you promote the technology improvement and they improve their productivity, they have a surplus, they're selling to the market, they improve their this income, then the economic situation of the local woman has been improved. But I agree with you that if there is not a very clearly targeted gender intervention policies, then it would be a long process. So that's the question.
Thank you very much. And could I at this point invite Professor Chakraborty to respond to that question of profitability? Because there's quite a lot in the literature about essentially value chains are only applicable to farmers with potential to be profitable, and those who aren't profitable should essentially get out of farming, which seems to be a very draconian response.
Thank you for addressing. Yeah, actually, this is a very significant question, and what we are or have been experiencing is, the incapability of the process to generate profitability. And in a sense, we are back to the square again, because it all started, as we know, with Rawls-Prebisch-Singer hypothesis, which asked for this kind of South-South cooperation and looking at the secular adversity against the primary producing sectors and countries. Now, here the profitability question actually relates to that kind of immiserization of the process. We grow up, we grow in capacity, we experience the paradigm shifts time and again from our centers of gravity, like when we are thinking in terms of GDP per capita approach to development, we shift over to some kind of a quality of life debate and land up on the human development, etc. That's a paradigm shift. And from there, now we are actually, again, experiencing a paradigm shift of addressing the hard development instead of soft developments. The soft developments, where includes health, education, nutrition, etc. And I think even gender. I'm very, very grateful to you, madam, for raising this question. The question deserves an entire session. Okay, I think we will see that in future. And I said that it is, back to the hypothesis again. It is the adverse relationship, maybe captured by terms of trade between the primary and other sectors, and also the primary and other members of the family. Okay, now if the process actually leads from an initial boost to the first point of the chain to the boost, being carried over to the final point of the chain, which I just showed you in terms of the newspaper cutting that showed that we are actually lacking in demand. This is a very crucial factor, this demand side of the whole thing. We have been really sort of mind-boggled in the supply side, but we are actually dealing with the question of demand side. And the extent to which this South-South and triangular cooperation, boosts up this demand side, looks into the capabilities of the farmers, small farmers, and, bridges or eliminates the gap between the farmers and the market, The mafias are eliminated, or mafias are transformed into some other being, productive being. And then only you can expect profitability, and then only we can expect sustainability of the entire process. Thank you.
Thank you for that. If we just take the last question. Did you have a question?
Okay, we can let it go.
Okay. I was going to invite you. Were you going to respond to this particular point? Because I was going to invite you to speak on the next one. If you,
no.
If I could, actually, let's continue on this point because I think from your experience, which is very much market driven, one of the things that you said in your presentation was that I want to make this farmer a businessman. I think that's quite a crucial point.
So, I'll start with number one. Our partnership with India is a partnership based on trust, meaning us, when we come into India, we are partnering, but it's led by India. So your question, I am starting with saying I will not answer it completely because it is an answer that should come from the Indian side when we talk about India, of course. But definitely, I think farmers, small farm holders, should come together. At the end of the day, they should work together. A farmer-producer organization is a model usually you can find across India. And it's a modality which comprises politics into it, and it's a very social issue. So I definitely will never answer or put my, my foot on this. But definitely, I think it is being done to some extent. You can see success stories, but there is no alternative. Small farm holders, if they want to become profitable, they should work together. They should reach the market above the head of the middleman, and get the profit. As to gender, we, Mashav, we have in Israel a few centers for training. One of them is focusing on women empowerment. And when I raised the need to address this chain, within this value chain, we came up with a training that focused women farmers on the full value chain that I exposed here. And I think this is a starting point. But in addition, focusing on business model generation, innovation, and marketing. So to train specifically women on these points. And for the last question, I don't see the lady here now, but I think insurance is something that farmers should have. And because climate change brings us to a point where farming is a higher and higher risk. And insurance is one of the main things that can protect farmers. That's it.
Can I add one sentence? Actually, I missed mentioning this. I mean, this concerns the empowerment of women question also, including the profitability. You see, a very fascinating new change has developed while we have been looking in terms of agricultural value chains. You know, it is now within this agricultural value chain, you have an agricultural sector and you have a non-agriculture industrial and market sector, you see. And then there is a question of the terms of trade between these two sides of the same sector. And if, you know, the primary sector in this chain is kind of strengthened and empowered, and as Madam pointed out, that it is much being comprised of women farmers, you know. If this then is strengthened, then women are also included. The process means empowerment to women, and if the process misses this point, then, you know, we are again back to the same.
Can I give you the last word on the issue about nutrition and, if I may, and diversity, biodiversity in particular? I'm conscious that we have to be out of this room by 10:30, but
good choice, because I'm a trade person, so I know about all this. Look, nutrition is a reality, all right? We are talking of South-South trade and triangular cooperation in agriculture. And in the beginning, we talked about getting to the SDGs, I think in your introduction, by 2030. Let's face it, I think for the sake of time and to be kind to all of us, that's a separate SDG. Directly linking it to this conversation could take us on a track that's different. Having said that, and you know, please indulge me for this, I saw a direct link as a trade person between the first part of the first question, self-sufficiency in pulses. Because I think this is very important. It's very important. Because how many of us know that the entire Canadian pulses industry started 36 years ago because of the demand from one country, and they're one of the largest in the world, India. And India, we are talking South-South cooperation, we are talking trust here. So I think in trade, trust is important. I think the professor had said that, and I'll come to his observation in a minute. The people who suffered because of India's overnight quantitative restrictions, of course, I'm sure there are political reasons, etc. But India had enough financial muscle to absorb the entire production that farmers in certain Eastern African countries produced only for the Indian market. Yeah, they fed you when you needed something, when you don't need it. Okay, they didn't starve. Some of us were able to divert it, and here I pay tribute to my colleague in WFP because we had about 150,000 tons, which is reality. So when we are discussing South-South cooperation, let's also discuss South-South citizenship. And as an Indian, I think I have the right to make that statement while in my own country. Professor, excellent points that you raised. and I need to put this on record because a lot of us leave with high-level thought. Fact remains, globally, South-South trade is over a third of global flows, almost 45% of global investment flows. It is the fastest growing. It is the fastest growing component of global trade. However, I fully understand where the professor came from because like rating agencies say, he took a triple B example. The worst place to do business is South Asia because of tariff, non-tariff, and technical barriers to trade. So let not a triple B, which we all know what a triple B rating does to companies, let not a triple B tar the rest of the world. South-South trade is growing. South-South trade will continue to grow. Linkage to the first and the second question, in all of Africa, pulses are called a woman's crop. Simple examples that we have had where farmers move to higher value agriculture, even smallholders. I talked of a multiple of 3 to 4 in Chile in terms of earnings. Labor incomes, because let's not forget, it's not just women farmers, but women farm labor also. There was a multiple of 2 that we have seen and we have reported in farm labor incomes. Yes, gender is very important. In our own way, we are looking at specifically targeting training programs for small women entrepreneurs in agribusiness. Because with this rural-urban migration, mostly of males, whether within the country or across borders, women are not only having to cultivate or produce, but also having to get involved in primary transactions. So there is quite a bit that can be done there and can be done very well. Rahul Prebish spoke outstanding theories that are still valid today in a bipolar world. We have moved on. We have moved on. We have multiple poles now. So I think we will do all of us quite a few favors if we take the ground reality of today and go forward. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for that. And on that note, let me just sum up. Well, first of all, let me invite the audience to thank the panelists in the usual way. I thought it was a very, very helpful discussion.
Mr. Chair, if I may just say something that I felt was skipped. And that was the nutritional component of the question that was raised later on there. With your permission.
Yes, very quickly.
Yes, just in 1 second. One thing that I need to say that there's a little bit of a more context to it. Whereas just 9% of people are reported to be undernourished, another 17.2% are slightly above, are moderately nourished. That means there's a very high chance that they can fall back and become undernourished. Furthermore to that, and I just leave that to that. Secondly, to the question of gender, in the context of post-harvest losses, as well as significant level of losses occur to women because of the social construct and because of the inability to access technology and so on. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Very important points, and I do apologise for we could spend the whole day talking about these issues, so it may seem that I've cut you off in mid-flow, but the points are well recognised. I mean, all these issues, we didn't really spend enough time on the whole question of nutrition and how smallholder farmers address that point, and biodiversity, but it is a huge issue in itself. The things I take away from this is that there is quite a lot of activity going on in the private sector, in government to government, etc., on value chains and strengthening value chains. One of the issues that is really important is the issue of trust. There has to be trust between the value chain actors, and that is always not the case, that there is that trust. The first thing one needs to do is ensure that trust is built. And that, as my colleague on the right said, could take time. It's not something that happens quickly. It takes many, many years in the case of the intervention from Mashaf and the intervention from China in Tanzania. This is a long-term game. Nonetheless, we have a relatively short time to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. And to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, let me say what I said at the beginning, there has to be a massive increase in both labour productivity and land productivity, particularly in Africa. And that is where a lot of the learning and technologies and understanding that is in the Global South can be shared through triangular cooperation. And I'll leave it at that point because I think there's a big opportunity to develop, build on what we've done so far. So thank you very much. I've certainly learnt a few things, and the rest of the day is followed, I understand, by several more interesting sessions. So thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, very impressive.
Can you please give it to the photographer behind you?
Close.
Close.
Oh, big one.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Thank
Very
you.
good chairship.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
No, that's, we share the same way, always speak in the same time. No overtime, no overtime.